Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. We're really excited to have you join us at the Haitian Times for this important discussion about immigration in the Americas. Um, my name is McElvey Neal. I'm the special projects editor at the Haitian Times. And I'm really honored to guide this discussion tonight because we've been covering our Haitian migration now for 25 years at the Haitian Times, starting as a print publication in Brooklyn. And now we're going digital across the globe. We have people who follow us across not just the Americas, but in Europe, all over the world, really. So we're really proud to be able to bring in some experts, some advocates, a couple academics to really walk us through what our community is going through right now, as a lot of the protections that have allowed Haitians to build lives in the US are being rolled back. So, looking at what's transpired since November 8th, I would say, when President Trump won the election, we saw how immediate the reaction was from our community when we reported on people literally picking up and leaving in the days that followed that election um, to just flee some of the places in the US that are the most vulnerable. I'm talking about places like Springfield, Ohio, for example, where we heard and learned about people who were leaving there for other parts of that state and also just leaving the US entirely. And so we thought it made sense to bring to life as much as we can some of the reporters and voices, the advocates that we work with, to try to really help us think through how folks are reacting to these changes in the US, all of these different executive orders, the policies, the Supreme Court emergency injunctions, all the shadow docket type things that we're seeing transpire. So I'm going to start by just asking you, the audience, if you have any specific questions about what it's like to migrate to Canada right now, the possibility of it, or family members who may be interested in doing that. If you have questions related to that, please put them in the Q&A section for us. If you have questions about relatives or people you might know who are in Mexico who may be quote unquote stuck and are wondering what to do, or if you have some experiences yourself that you'd like to share, please let us know in the Q&A. We'll be looking at that throughout, and after our initial discussion, we'll have some time to go through some of those questions. We hope that at the end of tonight, you will feel more informed about what is happening, what the options are for people who feel like they can't really stay in the US anymore, or even for those who don't really have an option and can't go to Mexico or Canada, what guidance you might be able to provide. If you are one of the people who are directly affected, right? Someone who's waiting to see what their TPS status is going to look like after August or after February 2026. Please feel free to share, raise your hand if you'd like to share your experience, or put in the questions you might have or Q&A. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and start with introducing our panelists. I'd like to start with Chantalia and just kind of go north to south because Chantalia Lewis is based in Canada, and she has covered a couple stories for us at the Haitian Times about how the Haitian community there is preparing or has been thinking about what to do to help those who are leaving the US. Chantal began her journalism career, Chantalia, my apologies, began her career in 2019 with Radio Canada, starting in Matane. Please let me know if I'm mispronouncing some of these places. and then moving on to Manitoba and later Ottawa. Over the years, she's reported on a wide range of current affairs topics across television, radio, digital platforms, and social media. Chantalia's work consistently seeks to highlight pressing social issues such as immigration, racism, and the environment. Currently, she's trying to expand her expertise in public relations, and with her passion for politics and globalization, she's decided to pursue degrees in international studies and modern languages, as well as a master's in social entrepreneurship and an MBA in public administration. So that is the caliber of reporter we have working with us at the Haitian Times. Thank you so much, Chantalia. Welcome. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you
The
very
other,
much. Thank you.
sure. The other person you're looking at on my screen, while we're waiting for a couple more to join, I'll just go ahead and introduce Annika Home. Annika is an award-winning freelance journalist based in Mexico City, Mexico. Since joining the Haitian Times as our Mexico correspondent, she's covered Haitian refugees, popular Haitian musicians, and the places that make Mexico home. Previously, Annika covered inequality and immigration in San Francisco and Boston, two places that instilled in her a love for shoe leather reporting. So, a woman after my own heart here with the shoe leather reporting piece. Thank you, Annika. Thank you so much for your hard work and for sending us such great stories out of Mexico. They've really been very compelling and impactful, and we're looking forward to hearing from you a bit more about what it's like on the ground from your perspective.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to answer some questions.
Great. Shantalia, I believe, dropped off, or maybe she just went off my screen for a little bit. So I'll give her time to come back on to just walk us through what things are like in Canada right now, if that's possible. There she is. Okay.
Sorry, there's gonna be some noise. Can you give me 1 more minute?
Oh,
And
sure, sure. I'll give
thank
you one
you.
more minute. So what we'll do is, since we have quite a few people with us, why don't we go straight to Annika to tell us what it's been like. I'm curious to know, Annika, if you could paint a picture for us of what the Haitian presence in Mexico has been like over the years, before Trump, as I like to think about it, and after Trump, how has it changed in terms of it being, a pass-through location for a lot of people to now maybe becoming their final destination?
Yeah, sure. So Mexico has been really interesting. Kind of like you mentioned, it's mostly kind of been a place to pass through to get to the United States. I think for a lot of reasons, obviously there's a strong community that already exists and lives there. And I think as we've seen in the US or in a lot of countries where there's migration, once you know one person who lived there and made a life there, maybe your family member, it's easier to go to that place. And as we all know, Mexico is just below the United States. And so, yeah, but it's been interesting because in 2014, in general, if we're just looking at asylum requests in Mexico, there was only 1,200 or 1,300 in total. And then that ballooned. So we're looking at 2019, and that was like 70,000 applications. And it just kept growing, surpassing over 100,000 applications from various countries. But Haiti, in the last 5 years, have been routinely one of the top countries where people are asking for asylum. And last year in 2024, there was about 70,000 total applications, and almost 11,000 of them were Haitians. And so now what we're seeing after Trump arrived is that there's even more applications anecdotally being applied for. This is kind of from a source that I had who was working in the refugee office in Mexico. they haven't like released new data exactly yet, partially because the agency in general, there's been a lot of demand, and they don't have enough funding, so they're just backlogged with so many applications from Haitians, but also from Cubans and Venezuelans, other nationalities that have also historically tried to get into the United States and who are in the similar boat of being affected by some of the Trump policies this year. And as many of you know, and the Haitian Times has done a great job of covering this, pretty much right after Trump got into office this year, he canceled the CBP One app, which was one of the reasons so many Haitians were moving to Mexico on a temporary basis in the past 4 years under Biden, because the app required that in order to get an appointment, you had to be physically in Mexico to even get that processed. And so what happened was there were a lot of migrant camps, so people who were living in tents or living in shelters, who were just kind of traveling. Some either took planes, maybe to Nicaragua and took a bus from there. Other people, starting even as far back as Chile or Brazil, going through the jungle, and like coming along foot and bus, until they reached Mexico to apply for these appointments. And so now that that is no longer around, um, Haitians and other immigrants are deciding, well, if we can't go back home, then I might as well try to stay here in Mexico. And that's kind of why we're seeing a surge now of applications. And I think Haitians specifically more than maybe Venezuela or Cuba, where some people who have come for economic opportunity are saying, okay, I'd still rather go back home than stay in Mexico. Whereas a lot of Haitians are saying, I don't feel safe there where I was, or I haven't lived there
In
in a long
Haiti,
time.
yes, in
Yeah,
Haiti, that is. Mhm.
sorry, in Haiti, yes.
Yeah.
Um, or, maybe they had come all the way from Chile or Brazil and they're like, well, I'm already here, so I might as well try to make it here. So sorry, that was kind of long, but that's kind of the picture that I've been seeing here.
No, but I think that helps us to understand just like how things have changed. What I'm curious to know is like how is the texture of, places like Mexico City changing when you have so many people who are saying, I don't feel safe going back to Haiti. I don't really have anywhere to go, right? A few years ago, I remember we did some reporting out of Tapachula, which is the first point where people were arriving from, I think around 2021 or so. And people had set up a little Haiti in Tapachula while waiting to be processed to continue moving, north. So what does that look like now? Like, are you seeing a lot more little Haitis popping up across different cities in Mexico, or people, reacting to the presence of Haitians in these increasing, tent encampments, or people leaving the tents to try to find permanent housing? What is it like to be there with so many Haitians?
Yeah, I think that is also a surprising change compared from last year to this year, because there were little Hades, and some places there still are, but there was one in Mexico City and one in Tapachula, and I had the fortune of going to Tapachula earlier this year in March,
Mhm.
and just the difference between what it looks like now to what it looked like only a few months before, like literally before Trump entered office. All the places where there used to be kind of a larger visible Haitian presence,
Mhm.
and encampments kind of in public parks, which was also happening in Mexico City. That's virtually shrunken. And now you can't really find it as easily as before. And I've talked to Mexicans and also just looking at pictures and me just being on the ground too and talking with Haitians who have stayed. Um, there's just been such a reduction because people are really trying to squeeze in and hoping like, okay, I'm gonna get called for my CBP1 appointment. And so even just comparing November to
Mhm.
January or February, um, there's not as much visibility. But I think instead it's that the Haitians who have stayed are now fortunately able to find apartments to rent, maybe jobs that aren't as visible. There are a variety of jobs that they could have. But I think that has made like the little Hades seem a little bit less prominent just because maybe people are just at work, during the day and they're not sleeping in the streets or in tents. And so it's not as in your face as before, but there definitely still are people here. And I think now the conversations are around of the Haitians who are here, how do they make that a sustainable little
Mm-hmm.
Haiti where they are? Instead of before, I think it was just mass people going through, and then they would leave once they got their appointments and like 7 months later. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I was thinking as you were speaking that maybe the idea was that they were dispersing to other parts of Mexico as well, which is a trend we had seen, I believe, in 2022 while people were waiting. But to know that maybe it's that they're finding jobs and going to work and just trying to look for ways to more or less assimilate. I think that's helpful information to know. I'll
Yeah.
come back to you, Annika. No, go ahead if
Oh,
you had.
sorry, really quickly, just on that point, for anyone listening, if they're interested, so Tapachula's in the south, like you mentioned, it's by the border, and then Mexico City is considered central. But even the people I've talked to, either in Tapachula or here, have mentioned exactly what you said. Once they kind of get settled with their documents, a lot of them are heading north, to places like Monterey, like Tijuana specifically, because just in general, the economy is like a bit better. It is also closer to the United States. And a
Mhm,
lot of them have found success there, getting paid higher wages than maybe you would find on the border, in Tapachula, where even Mexicans are getting paid less than maybe Mexicans living in the north. So we are
mhm.
kind of seeing that migration. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, sorry, I know I said last question, but before I go back to Shantalia, what is it like from a human to human standpoint? Like, is there backlash, for example, right, from Mexicans that are saying, oh, now you have to remain in Mexico, you're taking over our jobs, and the sort of rhetoric that we had heard during the campaign, and just knowing the history of anti-Black migration across the Americas, what is that like? From, Mexicans when they see these Haitians just kind of settling in.
Totally. And just as like a background, like I am a US citizen. And
Mm-hmm,
so I mean I'll say what I know from my reporting, but like I can't speak from like a Mexican's experience, but I
mm-hmm,
would say it's pretty similar. So you have a whole bunch of people and organizations who are very um empathetic to immigrants of all kinds, and some even more specifically to Haitians, because they recognize there is a component of racism that definitely exists. There's also a language barrier. So maybe Cubans or Venezuelans who are coming here for the same reasons, well, they already speak Spanish, right? So there's a lot less of a barrier for them to find jobs or to even talk to other people when you think about language being such a barrier, right, for people to getting to know you and to not stereotyping you. On the other hand, there has been a lot of backlash. When I first started reporting on some of the migrant camps here in Mexico City, one of
mm-hmm,
them that was primarily where a lot of the Haitian immigrants would go. You did have a lot of volunteers trying to help them, but you also had neighbors who were protesting against them.
mm-hmm,
Um, and they actually, I mean, the government won't admit it, but there was a lot of pressure on the government to disperse this camp. People saying
yeah,
it was like a public space, and you know, there's nothing, no one's outright going to say certain things, but like this was the second time that this has happened. And so there's been a lot of movement as well around like where people would go apply for refugee status, for example.
mm-hmm,
It had to move around in the city because neighbors would get fed up that so many people would
yeah.
congregate there, and then the government would move it farther and farther away. So that's kind
Wow.
of
So, sort of like not in my backyard sort of situation. Okay, so we'll come back to you, Annika. Again, thank you so much for that overview of what things are like in Mexico. right now for a lot of the Haitians who are waiting. We'll come back to you a little bit later to talk about, just from a policy or just documentation standpoint, what those processes might be like for folks who have families there or who are there themselves and may not know at the moment. I see that Yola Lamar just joined us. Thank you so much, Lamar, Yola, for joining us. I'm gonna go ahead and introduce you before I go to Chantalia. So Yola Lamar is a liaison to several attorneys for Haitian immigrants looking to receive affordable resources and prevent fraud prevention. She's a community engagement director at Our Helpers in Columbus, Ohio, which provides free groceries, household items, and essential home goods to immigrants in need. Yola consults organizations on strategy and advocacy for immigrants to help families in ICE detention and to help them sort out how to get the most out of their legal defense. Her recent work entails advocacy for Haitians in Ohio, including unjust human trafficking in the Columbus to Springfield corridor. Yola is originally from Roselle, New Jersey. Hey, New York, New Jersey, tri-state, where she began working in community and governmental advocacy with the mayor and council members there. She's since accelerated her advocacy for fair national immigration reform by working with Gerline Joseph of the Haitian Bridge Alliance, who is her mentor. So thank you, Yola, for joining us. I know you were tied up at a meeting with Homeland Security, so we appreciate you making the time to still be with us this evening. Thank you so much. So while Yola is getting settled in, I'd like to go to Chantalia to just give us a sense of what it's been like for the Haitian community in Canada, what she's seen and reported on for the Haitian Times as far as number of Haitians crossing the border into Canada since, I guess, over the past year or so, with the increases we've seen since January 20th. Chantalia, go ahead and give us a recap of what that's been like and any changes since you wrote that wonderful story for us back in April.
Thank you. So, as we all know, Canada is home for a lot of Haitians, especially Quebec, the province of Quebec. It's pretty much different from Mexico. I don't know. I'm not sure the Haitian community here is in Mexico, but in Canada, it's a very big. It's very implemented in Quebec City, especially. So if I may, I will just remind in 2017, 2019, we had also something pretty much similar that happened with the Haitian asylum seekers. Over 40,000 people, 40,000 Haitians decided to leave the US. Not decided, but they refused. The Trump administration again at the time
First, yeah.
refused paper. And we have calculated 7.5% of that many people decided to move to Canada. So in Canada, we are expecting something pretty much similar. So right now, this year, it's 520, if I remember correctly, over 520 Haitian people this year. So this is what they're expecting. The numbers hasn't changed pretty much since I wrote the numbers, but they're growing definitely. I don't have the final number yet. In April earlier this year, we were talking about 14,000 individuals for just 2 weeks, within 2 weeks. So this number keeps on growing and growing, obviously. In Quebec City, in Quebec, the province of Quebec, it's pretty much, again, Haitian community is very big here. There's immigration policies are being more tightened up, especially in Quebec. They are closing immigration, they're closing asylum because of the social securities are very fragilized. There's not enough aids. So it's getting very, very difficult to immigrate to Canada, especially in Quebec City. So right now the Haitian community are pretty much scared of what's gonna happen to their families that are moving to the US, or to even to Haitian that are in Haiti right now and then they're trying to move to Canada. It's being very, very, very difficult to move to Quebec City. So this is pretty much the portrait I can give you right now in Canada, especially in Quebec.
No, I mean, that's very helpful. And it's interesting that, we saw the surge. I'm glad you reminded us that this surge also happened with the first Trump administration in 2017. So
17.
yeah, this is not new. I think what's interesting is that Canada has its other issues with the US, right? Like there's the whole tariffs thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's, becoming the 51st state and some of these, grand proclamations that are coming from the administration. And yeah, we've seen them just like it makes sense that at this moment, in a way, they
Mm-hmm.
would kind of like tighten up um the entry into their own border. I was reading some of the more
Mm-hmm.
horrifying stories about people crossing the border in like sub-0 degree weather in
Mm-hmm.
snowstorms and just, freezing out or nearly freezing out. It's a very dangerous, journey as well. So what is it that the Haitian community there is trying to do, knowing that even though the official channels may be tightened up, people might still take the risk because they don't want to be caught off guard or be deported to Haiti, where they feel like that will be certain death returning to Haiti. What is the community in Canada trying to do this year to support folks?
Yeah. So you said something, Malkuvi, very important. There's also um, another discussion going on between the US and Canada. It's not the word discussion. We call it here. I don't know how it's called in the US, but in Canada it's called like the commercial war between, not the commercial war.
Oh,
It's
the
like freaking.
media. It's like the it's
It,
like
what
the propaganda, right? It's like
Yeah, well,
is that what you're
yeah,
referring
but it's also because of the tariffs going on.
to? Hmm.
So with US and Canada. So most of the politics right now are turning around that. That's why the immigration is taking a step back to
Yeah,
fight this war against the
bigger problems.
US. That
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this other problems. And again, Canada itself has a lot of problems. We're not gonna lie. We're talking about uh, rental properties. There's not enough rental places for people. There's
So
not
housing
enough
shortage. Okay.
the housing shortage. That's what I mean. Sorry.
Yeah.
So those all issues, they're pretty much what I see in the politics right now. They're using those issues and they're blaming the immigration most of the time,
Mm.
saying immigrants are taking way too much space, we don't have enough space to welcome more immigrants or
Yeah.
more asylum seekers. So it's kind of very, very difficult conversation to have within with the politicians and the community. Right now, what I can see as a Haitian myself also, and working with the community, is that we are trying to keep the conversation going with the politicians. We're trying to make sure we don't forget, they don't forget about the Haitian asylum seekers that are coming from the US, that they're not forgetting about the Haitians that are coming from also from Haiti. Because the community can do whatever they need. They mobilize themselves, they create organizations, they create discussions so to find ideas to help those people that are coming into Canada. However, if there is no help from the government, if there is no help from the politics, it's gonna be very hard to keep the Haitian community here in Canada or to keep them safe somehow
Mm-hmm.
in the country or anywhere else. So this is what I'm experiencing or what I'm witnessing. It's like this conversation, it's very hard to have right now, especially with all the issues what's going on. And recently in April as well, it was the election for Canada in Canada, the
Yeah.
big election.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like taking a step back from the media,
Yeah.
from the public space right now.
Okay. So
But in the
immigration,
community,
yeah, if I understand correctly, the issue of like immigrants and uh either welcoming them or providing for them has taken a back seat, like it's been put on the back burner while Canada deals
this is
with
how
like, its
exactly.
politics,
This is
housing shortage, strain on social services, that type of
mhm, like
situation.
yeah.
Hmm.
And at the same time, the
Thing that you
government or
say,
the
no, go
sorry.
ahead. I'm sorry, there's a delay. You go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. So what I meant to say, it's like at the same time, even this type of issue is taking a back seat right now.
Mhm.
But for example, in the Quebec, for the Quebec province, they're tightening up their policy for immigration. So people recently, I think last week, the Quebec decided to close off uh, the how do we call that? I forgot the name in English. Uh,
Is it an asylum process?
Sponsorship.
Oh, sponsorship.
Sponsor
Okay.
the
Mm-hmm.
just the simple sponsorship, family sponsorship. They decided to block it for a year, suspend that for a year. So right now it's a lot of going on, but there's
Yeah.
no much discussion around that.
Yeah, that's very tough, and it's unfortunate to hear that. It sounds like immigrants are being scapegoated for problems that existed even before their own arrival, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
being relegated to just not being a priority for the administration right now. With that said, I want to go to Yola. Thank you, Chantalia, for laying that out for us. Yola, I'm curious to know what it's like to counsel, if you will, or assist some of the Haitian families who just feel so desperate that they still want to try to get to Canada, even though they're being told there are limitations or certain requirements are not being met, all of that. What's that been like for the communities you serve in the Midwest?
Hi everyone, good evening. Thank you so much again for the invitation. Yeah, that's a really great question. It's difficult. Um, some communities I met with like just this, I don't want to hear this negativity. I'm just gonna go to Canada anyway. And I'm like, okay, I'm telling you that's you want to make sure you're doing things planned. You want to make sure that the law is being abided by. You want to make sure that your documentation is good. Actually, I have two Haitian families I'm currently assisting that had family on their way to Canada and they were detained. They're currently detained. So just really trying as hard as I can to see if there could be some type of relief for them, especially given Canada and America's agreement. So it's pretty difficult. There are a couple of people as I'm bringing awareness to this on TikTok. I have been seeing a lot of Haitian families becoming like more teachable and saying like, "Hey, I'm about to go to Canada. Do you have any advice?" Um,
Mhm.
I definitely feel like one of the greatest things that I'm doing is trying to create like a partnership with the Haitian community and different attorneys, so attorneys can kind of consult them and show them how they can be ready. I'm seeing that Canada recently is having issues with even verifying Haitian birth certificates, and because of that, that's like causing people to be detained, whether temporarily or just like we don't even know they're still being detained. And so I'm really emphasizing how like to make sure their paperwork is like in order, just go through their paperwork with attorneys. It's definitely a drastic difference I'm trying to convey to them. I was working with a victim of the trafficking situation in Columbus, Ohio, and she chose to go to Canada early last year. So she, didn't have too many barriers. She had family out there.
Mhm.
But I think that a lot of people in our community are oversimplifying, like, I'm just gonna go to Canada. I have an uncle out there, where there has to be some type of plan. And
There's a
I'd
lot.
even go to say,
Mhm.
beyond that, it's not just, it's if you go to Canada at this point, right? And because of that, we have to now plan, God forbid, if you get detained. For example, there was a Haitian family with a 7-year-old boy who's currently detained in Texas. They were on their way to Canada. They didn't make it to Canada. And it's difficult to help them. Why? Because no one knows their alien number, no one knows anything, no one has access to. So I really am trying to like emphasize the importance of planning with an attorney and making sure someone in Canada and America has access to their immigration documents that can
Mhm.
advocate for them. The less we know, the harder it is to help advocate for an immigration relief in ICE detention. And the more we know, the better it is to try to fight to see if you can get to Canada and try to prevent deportation.
Mhm. Thank you so much, Yola. I just have just couple follow-up questions for you, and then we'll go over to some of the questions that I see popping up. I might ask you to address a couple of them. One is when you said, people are saying, I don't want to hear all that negativity. I have a relative or whatever. I'm just gonna go, right? So two questions here we have kind of relate to what you're saying. One is, if you have your own car, can you just drive the car over to the border, right? And on a related note, the other question is, is there an option to cross at the Peace Bridge? I believe that's the one over in Detroit. If I'm mistaken, please let me know.
Is it
Um,
is that oh, okay. I guess I'm thinking about the ambassador.
Now, I don't know exactly what the Speech Bridge is that the person is referring to, right? But I think the core of the question is essentially, can you just go, or do you need to make an appointment if you're headed directly to that Peace Bridge border crossing? Can you make an appointment with a border agent if you plan to ask for asylum? So in your um in your assistance of in your helping other folks, with some have these questions come up before? Do you see people who are just determined to go no matter what, even if they've been advised to wait, plan, get their paperwork in order first?
Yeah, there are people that are determined to go for sure. In
Mhm.
terms of still like trying to make an appointment, honestly, I don't know much about that. These Canadian cases are very new, and I guess it's because after the CHNV and TPS, there's like this surge in desperation, like more of a
Right.
surge. So I'm kind of like dealing with it as it comes along. That is something I am consulting with attorneys about and speaking to them about, and this is why I have been telling Haitian families to speak with attorneys to see if there's any way that you can get to the country without like any hiccups. I'm not sure about an appointment base. I do know that they allow you to apply, but there's been so much restrictions, like the law is changing every day.
Mhm.
I thought a family was safe because they came through CHNV and they was detained by CBB, right? And so like I feel like as law as what we know it is just rapidly changing. And as I get these questions, I never got that question before. That's a really great question. I'm just asking like my attorney buddies, my attorney networks to kind of relay the information to Haitian families. But yeah, irrespective of the negativity and people being detained, trying to get into Canada, some people are still. I think
Mhm.
because I showed proof on TikTok the other day that 3 families reached out because they had a family member detained at the border. They're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, okay. Can you help me plan or can you like, refer me to a
Wow.
lawyer?" So, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioning being stopped by CBP versus being stopped by Canadian, immigration agents. Those are different entities, right? And I think
Yeah.
what we've heard is that a lot of people, even before they get to the border crossing, the official border crossings to present their documents, right? They're being stopped along the way and ending up in detention centers in all over the country in the US to await removal proceedings. So I think that's a really like that's a that's worth emphasizing that you may not even get to the border, even if your documents are in order.
For sure. Yeah, and if Canada doesn't think your documents are okay, they're just gonna send you right back. They have to deport you to America, and then America most likely will deport people depending on certain cases. I've been dealing with a case since April, which is very heartbreaking, where this New Jersey Haitian man was driving with like a cousin, and they have a trucking company, and
Mm,
unfortunately, they were driving on the Ambassador Bridge, the bridge in Detroit that leads to
but
Canada.
mhm,
And that's the type of bridge, like, well, most bridges, obviously, like when you're going, like you can't come back, like it's only one way. And he was begging the driver, like, please let me off, please let me off. Like, I'm looking at Canadian flags, like, let me off, let me off, let me off.
mhm,
And the man was just like, I would never do that to you, blah, blah. He's like, please let me off. Like, I think we're about to be in Canada. Lo and behold, they didn't even spend like 20 minutes in Canada. Unfortunately, he was taken into custody, and he's been in custody since April. I've been really fighting for him. So just imagine someone who literally has a court date in 2028 for their asylum hearing, and it was an accident. It was literally an accident. Like, they just took them, didn't really care about the nuance of the situation, and it's something that we're still fighting for. I
mhm.
do know that there was an accidental border crossing with this lady from Guatemala. They detained her momentarily, CBB1, but they let her go. But I think that she has a removal order.
Mhm.
But yeah, I guess it just depends on what official how they feel that day. But yeah.
Yeah, wow. That's really unfortunate, that it comes down to it just being in the moment and what type of agent, makes the stop. So one last question, Yola, before we go back to Annika and take some more questions. When you mentioned an agreement that the US and Canada have, right? Or are you talking about the various numbers or quantities of people that the different countries agreed to take on to help alleviate the influx? What did you mean by the agreement between the US and Canada?
So Canada and America has an agreement called the third party or the third country agreement.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, if you're not valid, like Canada has to legally like deport you back to America. And I remember doing like a info session with an attorney last November, because she literally was emphasized. That was the first point. She said, please, I know how we are as Haitians. Do not go running to the Canadian border. They're going to detain you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tried to explain this like law to our, community, to get them to understand, like, you can't try to sweet talk them if they do feel as if you're not valid enough to enter the country, your documents are in order, like they legally have to hand you over to America. And that's what we've been seeing. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So, I mean, there's that. Thank you for clarifying that. So for the person who asked the question about, can you just take a car if all of your documents are in order? Can you just take a car, present yourself at a border crossing like the Peace Bridge in Buffalo and ask for asylum? Like Yola said, it's really on a case by case basis, and with the law changing so quickly so often and some of these subjective determinations being made, there's no real answer that she could provide right now. So the best bet would be to seek an attorney, right, to help plan and then, take it from there is, I think, the best course of action we can offer at this moment, at this time. Um, Chantalia, there is a follow-up question for you as well, as far as what you meant by Canada tightening up its policies with regard to Haitians. Did you want to go over, you mentioned, for example, the sponsorship that's been paused for a year, right? We've heard of a lot of just rumored, you know, policies coming out of Canada. Every few weeks or so, we get a question about, oh, Canada, we or so and so made it and they were able to get in. What are some of the ways Haitians, not just Haitians, immigrants used to be able to count on going into Canada that have now been closed to them, besides the family sponsorship that you mentioned? Are there some other
Okay.
common?
There are other provinces, there are different ways to immigrate to Canada. So I just want to answer the question regarding the types of policies. Right now, there's the Canada and Quebec. I'm gonna talk mostly about Quebec because Quebec is where I live and I know much more about that. The province of Quebec has put a cap to how many immigrants, how many asylum seekers, how many people coming in
Yeah.
within the provinces.
Mhm.
And recently they have reached that cap for sponsorship, so that's why they have closed it. I don't know if they have reached that cap for asylum seekers, but I know their maximum is over 7,000, if I'm not
Mm.
mistaken. So there's a cap for different type of ways to move immigrants to Canada. So this is why it's getting more difficult. Other ways to move to Canada. So Canada is a very big country. There's like over 10
Yeah.
provinces, 3 territories. People has found themselves moving to Manitoba, where I used to live, very, very far away from Quebec. When I'm saying far away, it's Quebec City. If from Quebec, but not from. It's still in the country. A good way I found it's by francophone when you speak French, and I know a lot of people who speak French. And outside of Quebec, they're looking to have francophone communities to grow the francophone community outside of Quebec. So that's why there
I
is a
see.
mobilization to get more immigrants, francophone immigrants to other provinces like Manitoba, like
I
Vancouver,
see.
Ontario, for example. Other ways
Mhm.
is by qualified worker.
Yeah.
If you
The
have
professional white collar workers.
exactly. So these are the ways. There are many ways to move in, but again, they're putting a cap to they slowly putting a cap to everything right now. So
Yeah.
this is why it's getting very, very difficult.
Wow. And it sounds like some of these nuances kind of explain why there are different people who are allowed in and aren't allowed in, right? If on a
Hmm.
province basis, right? Different provinces have different crossings. And depending on what their
Exactly.
policies are, they might let some people
Hmm.
in, but not others. So that explains why it's not like a set answer. But it also explains
Exactly.
why, like Yola said, you really have to plan. It sounds like you can't just take a car and drive there. If you're gonna drive there, you have to know exactly which border
You have
crossing
to
makes
plan.
sense for you to end up in the exact province that might be more open to you than somewhere else, right?
Hmm.
So thank you so much, Chantalia,
Hmm.
for walking us through
I
that.
just want to add one more thing.
Mhm.
I just want to add one more thing. I want to repeat myself again, but the province of Quebec, it's home to many, many Haitians for many, I don't know, since like 1950s or 1960s.
Mhm.
So there's a big community, and the province of Quebec has the community at heart somehow. I'm not gonna
Mhm.
go into detail, but they do understand the situation for
Yeah.
the community because the Haitian community has a big power in the province of Quebec. Outside
Mhm.
of Quebec, they are less powerful, but they can go to other provinces. It's easier to go to other provinces actually right now when we're looking at the immigration process, it's easier to flee or to move to other provinces than in Quebec, even though the politicians in Quebec understand the situation with the Haitian community.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. And I think it requires, following up for sure. So stand by
Yeah.
for more stories on this. I think it's really important to try to explain some of these nuances to people. Seems like it's not like a one size fits all answer to
Mm-mm.
everybody, right? And that seems to be the one constant with covering immigration that I can comfortably say a lot of things are just on a one-to-one basis. It's not, and that's part of the problem too, that there's not, you know, when we talk about immigration reform in the US, national reform, there's not one big, law that governs who gets in, who gets out, or who gets kicked out. We just know that there are executive orders coming, there are quotas for detentions coming out of the White House, all in service of this mass deportation thing, and some of the impacts of, the workforce, like who's gonna do all of these jobs, um, separating families and creating more social, inhumane situations for people. The human trafficking you talk about, Yola, no one seems to be thinking about those impacts as much as just meeting these campaign goals that were set on the campaign trail. So guess I'm gonna wrap it up here or ask you all to wrap it up by just um letting folks who find themselves in these situations or who have family members and friends in these situations, thinking about Canada, thinking about what, to do if you're in Mexico, what are some of the things that they need to be mindful of as they plan, right? As we were saying. And specifically, if you can offer some resources or um, additional ways to get more information or maybe find suitable, reputable attorneys. I think that might be a good way to wrap this up. So I'm gonna come around to Annika, whom we started with, to just talk about what some of the legal or policy considerations folks need to know about for those who are remaining in Mexico.
Sure, and I'll try to keep it quick. I think in a lot of ways, like the migration we're seeing is maybe the opposite of what's happening in Canada in the sense of like you're applying for um in asylum mostly instead of in other forms, but so like people are coming maybe like after long travels or maybe directly like from Haiti instead of like from the US to Canada. Sorry to
Yeah.
clarify, instead of like to the US to Mexico, at least so far. I would say that if you're trying to apply for asylum from a country that's not the US, I mean, in general, the procedure is the same. You go to COMAR, which stands for the Comisión Mexicana de Ayuda a Refugiados. You present yourself within the first 30 days that you're there, and you start the process. Mexico is pretty friendly overall and will give you different things such as like a constancia, which is allowing you to travel and to find work, a QURP code, which also allows you to like have medical services for free. If you have children who are with you, they're allowed to enroll in the public school system for free. It's a right. So that is something also I'm going to see if more people are taking advantage of now that they're staying in Mexico. And generally this process is you are going to be interviewed by someone at Comar and you kind of have to talk about, why you're seeking refuge in Mexico, fear, safety, those sorts of things are kind of what you would consider for an asylum specifically.
Yeah.
What I've also seen as an asterisk is like maybe if you have come from Chile or Brazil, where things aren't as intense as like in Haiti itself, if you came from there directly, they might reject your asylum case but give you a secondary category, which they called a PC or protección complementaria, which essentially allows you to stay in Mexico, so you're not going to be deported, but maybe has some less rights than if you were an asylum seeker. For example, if you're an asylum seeker, you basically have all the rights that a Mexican has. It's much easier for you to apply for your family to join you once you have that.
Mhm.
Whereas for PC, you are not granted that right. And so that's the difference. And just if people are watching, you're allowed a lawyer free of cost. You just have to ask someone for that. You can ask them when you're applying for asylum there.
Mhm.
The UNHCR, or the High Commissioner of Refugees, also known as ACNUR in Spanish here, has
Mhm.
been helping the Mexican government process these applications. And so also if you need a translator to speak either Creole or French, usually there are people there who can help you do
Oh,
that.
that's
Um, yeah, and
helpful.
there's other like minutia that I can pass on, and people who are interested can look into that. But that's, I think, the main thing.
Yeah, no, I think that sounds like super helpful as a starting point, right? Um, I'll say that we do have a resources list that we'll be sharing with people who signed up or are in this Zoom. And so we'll add some of these resources that Annika has mentioned and any others that Shantalia and Yola might want to add before we share that with everybody. There's a quick follow-up, I think, for you, Annika, before I go to Shantalia and Yola. One person is asking, if I live in the Dominican Republic, how can I apply to go to Mexico or even to Canada, right? At this point, it's a very good question, right? Like, how do I skip the US if I feel like I'm ready to emigrate from somewhere else? Is that something you can quickly answer, or should we follow up with this person?
Yeah, to my understanding, you can just present yourself at the border between Guatemala and Mexico, which is basically like Tapachula is the major city, like 20 miles from the border. How a lot of people I know have done it is maybe flying to Nicaragua and like taking
Yeah,
the buses through there, which can be a little dodgy. There's also, I think someone mentioned human trafficking, like there
yeah.
is some of that going on as well. So, I mean, I don't know if that's something I would necessarily recommend, but once you do get here, and you present yourself, you're at least safe until they decide on your case.
Mhm.
So that is just what I've been hearing of people who have gone to Mexico that way.
Thank you. I think one takeaway from us at the Haitian Times would be to look at which countries' embassies are actually still functioning um, in Haiti, certainly, right? But in some of these other places where we know that there are large Haitian populations, like the Dominican Republic, perhaps it might be worthwhile to look at what the steps are to seek to emigrate from those places as people look at other options. So thank you for that question. I think she had a similar question about Canada. Shantalia, do you know what the process might be for folks who are hoping to immigrate to Canada?
Canada has put up a website with IRCC, Immigration, Refugees, Citizenship in Canada. So there is a complete website for measures for Haitian nationals with passport holders, helping the Haitian community to move to Canada. There's one point as well I would like to say. So they have removed some fees for Haitian people who wants to apply
Mm-hmm.
um, to Canada, regarding applying for through work permit, study permit, or visitor record. And
Mhm.
also, if you don't have your travel documents with you, they may allow you to get in if you explain that you lost how you lost your passport or something like that. But it might be difficult. So it's all in the website if you need information. I will suggest as well to try the Francophone Mobility Work Permit. If
Mhm.
I know most of the flex for Haitian people is to move to Quebec because this is where the family are, this is where they speak
Right.
French. But there's also aids, there's also open better immigration process to other provinces, Ontario, Manitoba,
Mhm.
Saskatchewan, Vancouver. You can find your options there. I know it's the reflex to go, let's go to Quebec. This is where I know we speak French and it's easier,
Yeah.
but it can be as easy to move to somewhere else. That's my
Mhm.
suggestion.
Yeah. No, that's very helpful. Thank you so much, Shantalia,
Yeah,
for
welcome.
that. Anything else you wanted to add before I go to Yola about just in
Uh,
general? Go ahead.
no, go ahead, let it happen.
No, just anything else in terms of, final words you wanted to share before we go to Yola.
Mm. No, I think my final words was what I want to say. It's like, don't stick with Quebec, the province of Quebec. Just try to find other places in Canada. It's easier, and they're looking for people who speak French. And I know in Haiti we speak French, so it's easy.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Shantalia. Yola, I'd like for you
Very welcome.
to, yes, I'd like for you to talk through just what are we, to advise for folks who are specifically in the US right now, right? Who have family members or friends who are going through all of these executive orders and injunctions that are coming in and out. It's so dizzying, right? Like constantly, every other week something is changing. We didn't even get to talk about the ban on 12 countries, including Haiti, which is, an oxymoron because a place is too dangerous. It's a terrorist, it's filled with terrorist organizations, yet, people can be deported from there. That's a whole other panel we'll have to come back and do. But, what can we do as Haitian Americans, I guess, who are getting this the most, right? With people coming to us or trying to talk things out, like what can we do or say to them at this point as they're considering their next moves?
I would say
And-
to
Or even
not
if they decide to stay, right? Like what can you offer both, I guess, for folks who are deciding to stay and for folks who are deciding this may not be for them? What can you share? Share some thoughts on that.
I'd first like to say, like, I totally understand the fear, the anxiety,
Mhm.
the emotions, and it's easy for me to just say relax, calm down when, we're not in that situation. But
Yeah.
one of the things I've been telling our community is like, do not make a decision off panic because people like
Mm.
this administration, I've been in the courtrooms, I've been in ICE, I've been in ICE check-ins. Like the whole tonality has shifted. Like even in the courtrooms, they don't even have legal services for free. They don't have no resources. And everywhere you go, um, they're literally asking people to leave the country or self-deportation, whatever
Right.
they want to make it fancy. But they are doing everything they can to
Mhm.
make you confused, to make you feel weak, to make you feel like there's no obstacle. And I'm sensitive to that. I do know that there's an attack on work permits, there's slower
Mhm.
processing times, but one, and there are people fighting for you. In fact, uh, July 29th, there's going to be a court case, right? On the Program Biden class certification.
Mhm.
And I remember when I made the video about the Biden program in April about like that going into the courts, a lot of Haitians did not know that people were fighting for them. And so I would say to one, not panic, figure out what's happening, like tune out from all the TikTok noise, all the WhatsApp noise, really, really, really hone in on credible news sources. And even as Haitian Americans, we can filter out the noise for our families. We can tell them this is fiction, this is fact, to help them, like kind of navigate media literacy. So I'd say that, because you don't know what can fall into place, right? And even though I know a lot of people are saying, like, well, it doesn't matter what these courts are saying because the Supreme Court has the final authority. Well, no, because legally, when you have an injunction, that puts a pause on everyone that can be impacted, which still gives you a little bit more room and time. And that's what we saw in April with the CHNV. So that's what I would say. The second
Mm,
thing is to consult with an attorney. And I know that sounds very like basic, and everyone says this, but it's true. For example, I know this woman I'm working with, she has a deportation letter because she missed her court appearance because she got into a car accident. So she thought it
mm,
was over. But I got a deportation letter. I got to leave. I'm like, no, if you can prove, right, you got a car accident, they can work with you. Number two, didn't you tell me that somebody pulled a gun out on you, an American man? And she was just like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, and you work with the police? And she was like, yeah. And I'm like, well, you can be eligible for a U visa. And after 3 years, you can get your green card. After 5 years, you can get your, you can apply for citizenship. So I always tell our community, like, do not limit themselves just to asylum and TPS. And I know, like, a lot of people don't really qualify for certain things. I do get that, but you don't know. And lawyers cannot tell you what you can have access to if you don't speak up or tell people things that you've been through. If
mhm,
you worked at a job and you weren't getting paid and things like that, like there's different ways in the systems, like few nuances. I have a close friend of mine, right? She was a victim of an American citizen that was basically like using her citizen her status over her head, and she didn't know that she was eligible for VAWA. And I'm like, I think you're eligible for VAWA. And I recommended her to an attorney, and an attorney said,
victims of domestic violence is what you're
yeah.
referring to? Mhm,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even men, it doesn't even have to be like physical violence, like
right.
emotional, psychological. If somebody like in a relationship use your status against you and they're a US citizen,
Mm,
and she didn't know that. And so I say all this to say, like, there
mhm,
are different pathways. They're going to attack the popular streams because they see that there's a lot of fluctuation in the gravity to these particular statuses. So I'd say really talk to an attorney. You don't know possibly if you can be eligible for something. I'm actually trying to spearhead an advocacy campaign in Columbus to get people that were victims of that trafficking crisis to see if they can be eligible for U or T visa.
mm,
So there's just different ways that people are fighting for them. And number three, I'd say to plan for everything, right? Even if you have TPS today, plan, God forbid, an ICE plan. If ICE was to take you, what can you, your family, or your community do? Do you have a sponsor? If you came to this country through CBB1 or Biden, well, not Biden, but CBB, well, Biden, yes, because yeah, Biden or CBB1, because yeah,
yeah,
you want to find someone that can really understand your story. And if a lawyer is able to fight for your case, especially you came through the border, the first thing they're going to ask you is, do you have a sponsor? And most times, if you do not have a sponsor, they can't really move on with your case. And so find a sponsor, because there are different immigration reliefs. Even if someone is in ICE detention, there are ways they can be released. Um, and so you want to plan, you want somebody to know your document, where your documents are at, where your alien number is. If you have a health medical problem, you know, don't be ashamed. Like, say that. That can help you get released from ICE detention. They just released a 50-year-old woman I was working with in New York City because she had heart problems, right? And
mhm,
so, I think it's really important to have these conversations in our community, and to really, just don't be ashamed. To just be honest so we can plan better, and to make sure you can get out of ICE detention if you're eligible, and if you have another relief. So I would say that. And if you feel like you all odds are in your favor, you don't have anything else, you don't have any support, I
Mhm.
would plan, even, if you do plan to self-deport, and consult with an attorney, because you don't want anything to backfire on you down the line if you do try to, readmit yourself to the United States.
Wow. So I'm as I was, now we're getting like even more questions, right? So this tells us
Oh,
that
and I'm sorry, did you guys go over that Haitians are getting deported to Mexico right now? Did you guys go over that?
no, not just
Oh,
yet.
okay.
Do you
Oh, yeah.
wanna do you
But
wanna
yeah, so Haitians, they're like, the
um,
ball is starting to roll for Haitians getting deported. So just very quick, um, if you have a problem with your family, if you have an altercation, do the best you can to de-escalate it, because so many Haitians are getting detained over family drama, or li femme ça, da 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 da. Da. This Haitian man, I'm talking to him, and I was doing work with a lawyer. He gave him $300 because unfortunately on his case he was deported, all because someone lied and said that he hit his woman. And so I think it's really important to really talk about de-escalation skills, and try not to get the local police involved. Like, these people will say we don't work with ICE. That's a lie. Yes, they do. It doesn't matter if they have a 287G agreement or not. Most of these local law enforcement will hand people over to ICE. And
mm,
so deportations are rolling for Haitians, and there are Haitians that are being deported to Mexico ever since the Supreme Court decision allowed for this administration to deport people back to, like, third party countries.
yeah, I mean that one is a gnarly one, right? Because yeah, I mean in general families should try to work things out without getting law enforcement involved, but it's hard to do that when someone is in a real situation. We have seen cases of domestic abuse pop up. We've seen killings. We wrote about one just over the weekend of someone who was murdered here. So it's hard to take that as a just like blanket advice. So I mean,
For sure.
everyone has to figure out what works best for them, but their safety is
Yeah.
paramount, I would say.
No,
Good
absolutely. Like,
point.
if it's like a argument or something that's like minor, nothing like super hardcore DV, definitely report to the police.
Yeah.
I'm against that. But if it's like something, because I know for some Haitians I've worked with, they called the cops for everything, that
Mhm.
were trafficking victims. Even when with this lady's son, like, she had a cold, he had a cold, and she called the cops. And I'm like, wait, that's not how it works here. Just be careful. So, yeah, believe it or not, I swear, true story. So yeah, what I'm saying is, like, try to, if it's not like a super urgency, try to de-escalate it, because they
Yeah.
will find any reason to hand you over to ICE. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, this is a good reminder, right? But I feel like we're after having this chat with you all, I feel more optimistic personally, right? It's not all doom and gloom. It's not, you know, dire situations across the board. Yes, it's horrible that so many thousands are being deported, but as you all have said, you know, when you like arm yourself with real, credible, factual information, um, I think you can have more options than just the three, right, that you mentioned, like TPS, asylum, for example. There are different provinces in the case of Canada that you could go to. And even not go to, but you can try to apply to figure out if that makes sense for you. And even in the case of Mexico, if that's where you're staying, I think it's heartening to hear that Mexico is being more friendly in terms of helping people settle in by giving them their authorization to work or travel, you know, get around, for kids to go to school, to get health services, right? So it sounds like no matter where people end up, this is kind of the typical Haitian thing. Like we'll figure it out, right? Like we'll make it work. So I think that's the core message that for our listeners, would be important to keep in mind, right? Just get the right information, get an attorney, a credible one, not a paralegal, not a notary public or whatever it is, like an actual attorney. We have heard of some attorneys who are offering different installment plans to people to try to pay, right? It is expensive, you know? 20, $30,000, like whatever the numbers are, they vary depending on the case and the complexity of your case, because lawyers are paid by the hour, and it makes sense for them to charge for their services what's appropriate, right? So again, it's up to you to figure out or help someone figure out what it might take for them to get to a place where they can settle and build a good life. So I would say take away from tonight that you have options, you know. It's not all gloom and doom, and don't panic. We have a community. People are looking out for us, for people in our circles, right? For our community. So don't give in. Don't throw in the towel or be don't be down about what the future looks like. So that's what I would say to wrap it up. I know we're way over time. And like I said, we'll go ahead and share all of the resources that Shantalia and Annika and Yola mentioned tonight. I think they're very important for people who have specific questions about, how to get to, say, Manitoba and all of that, right? I would refer to the CIC website that Shantalia had mentioned to try to get more of that information. And we'll put that website in the resources as well for everybody. But with that said, I just want to say thank you to everyone. Be sure to follow us at the Haitian Times on all platforms. Shantalia, Annika, and Yola, please go ahead and put your platforms, usernames, and handles in the chat so we can make sure to have them in the communications we'll set out so people can follow you. So again, thank you all so much for attending from wherever you were tonight. We really appreciate you. And as we've been doing at the Haitian Times for 25 years, we'll continue to stay on this story for you. And last but not least, I forgot to mention our sponsor for this conversation tonight, URL Media. Without partners like them, who are looking out for independent journalism, ethnic community journalism everywhere, we could not do this work. We would not be as successful in doing it. So thank you, URL Media, for always supporting us. And please reach out to the Haitian Times if anything comes to mind. If you have tips, if you have more questions, please send them to info@haitiantimes.com, and we'll try to get back to you with the credible sources that we've formed relationships with to keep you informed. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great evening, and we'll see you next time.